It can be really hard to find advanced training on Fusion these days. There's just not a lot of practical wisdom out there yet for making movie magic inside of DaVinci Resolve. So we put together this advanced visual effects workshop, which we could probably charge money for, but because we want to inspire as many people to make amazing stuff in Resolve as possible, we're giving it to you for free. If you watch to the end, you'll learn how to create some awesome realistic visual effects using a shot from our Star Wars film, of which you can download all the media for with the first link in the description down below. You can also click whoosh right there. Yeah. Just a little disclaimer, this is more of an advanced video, so if you're brand new to Fusion, I would recommend checking out some of my more basic videos first. This is for the people that want to get their feet wet, really try their hand at some crazy compositing techniques. Let's go. And I'm just going to jump right in here. We have our edit laid out here in the edit page, and the shot that we're going to be working on here today is this third shot, Star Wars 105. And you can either put an edit together like this if you want, or you can just open the media and put it into a new timeline. Either way, Star Wars 105 is what we're looking at. And I did mock some stuff up here in the edit page. I just put a solid color over his lightsaber here and over the Jedi's lightsaber here and through our little droid there, just so we can kind of basically understand the timing, just kind of slap some stuff together. So let's take a look. So he turns on his saber, and then the Jedi puts his arm down and kind of force grabs his saber like that and turns it on. And that's kind of the timing. So one thing I'll do just to make this a little bit easier on us is to select our clip that we're going to be moving into Fusion, and I'll hit M on the keyboard to make a marker for when the red saber starts. And then right here where the cyan saber starts like this, just because it's easier to have the timing and everything where you can play things back really easily on the edit page before we've done a whole lot of stuff. Let's select all of these in the edit page and hit D on the keyboard to disable. In fact, I'm even going to get rid of the droid here just so I don't have that in the way. I'll make sure that I'm over Star Wars 105 here in the edit page, and then I'll switch over to Fusion. That's going to open up this clip in the Fusion page. And I'm going to go up to Workspace and uncheck Show Page Navigation. I'm also going to zoom in a little bit just by grabbing this little slider here and moving this over so that we're just seeing what's in between these yellow tick marks. Same thing here. And that's just going to limit where we can scroll to be just what we have in our edit. Okay. And in this project, I already have my color management set up as well. Now, if you're starting this project from scratch, I'll show our page navigation here. Make sure to go down to your project settings. And here under color management, switch this from DaVinci YRGB to DaVinci YRGB color managed. And then let's uncheck automatic color management. And here where it says color processing mode, let's scroll down and hit custom. And the only thing we're going to change here is this timeline color space. Let's switch this to DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate, like that. That's all we need to do. Now let's hit save. And now Resolve is in color managed mode. The one thing that we'll have to do is go over to our media pool and select whatever footage we're using. Just select all of this footage and right click and go down to input color space and make sure to tag the input color space with whatever your camera is. This footage is under Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5. So make sure that you have that set up. I've also done that for our VFX space. Same thing, just select them all, right click, input color space, Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5, okay? That is going to make it so that we can see what our color management is going to do in the color page, and we can make some informed decisions on how bright or dark or what color we want to make things, because we're using that same color management all the way through. Now, this is new in version 19 of Resolve, where this actually works. Before Resolve 19, it was kind of broken when it came to the Fusion page, but now it works great. So I think we're all set up. I'm going to go over to Workspace and uncheck Show Page Navigation so we have enough room here. And I think we're ready to get started. So we're all set up for our shot, and there are a few things that we need to do here. One of them is we need to mask out me right here because I was holding the lightsaber to move it over. And the idea of this was that we would just move that lightsaber over like that, and that we would erase the blade, and the lightsaber would fly over into his hand, and it would work great. It's kind of hanging awkwardly. There's like it just kind of didn't really turn out how we thought it would. And so rather than mess with that, what we're going to do is just erase all of this, and we're going to animate this lightsaber handle flying in, because that's actually going to be slightly easier than what we were doing. Now, feel free to try it another way if you want to. This is just the way that I kind of decided to approach this shot. But essentially what we need to do is we need to kind of erase the lightsaber and isolate the arm and the robe and everything. And then we need to take a still of the lightsaber handle here and then have that fly into his hand and then kind of merge with this footage right here. Then we can do a little bit of erasing of this and adding in the real blade, that kind of thing. We also need to erase this blade before it turns on and then put the real lightsaber blade in. And we need to put our droid in here. So there's quite a few things to do on this shot, which is why it's its own course. And we're going to do our best here. And I'll just drag this down and hit 2 on the keyboard so we can see it. We have a clean plate that is all in focus. And we also have a clean plate that is blurry. Now, we did this because, of course, this whole thing also has a focus rack, which makes it so much harder. Why have we done this? Why did we do this? So much harder now. So we do have the clean plate, so it'll be easier to erase things. Let's go ahead and use the clean plates, and let's see if we can erase some things roughly, and then we're going to rebuild stuff on top of the blank plate. Now, one thing that's going to help is if we stabilize this a little bit. If we zoom in here, you'll probably be able to tell that this is moving up and down just a little bit. And so it's going to help us if we stabilize this just a touch. It's just going to make everything else easier. So let's go ahead and let's do like a planar tracker. And I'm just going to grab a bunch of these trees here with the planar tracker. And for motion type, let's just say translation for now. Maybe translation and rotation. Let's go with that. We'll set our reference time to whatever it was, 101. That sounds good. And we'll track to the end. Okay, we'll go to the original frame and then track to the beginning like that. And now for operation mode, let's just say steady. Make sure we're looking at our media out, and let's look at this before and after. Oh yeah, much better. It does do the rotation here, and I don't know if we necessarily need that rotation. Might be better without the rotation. So let's actually go back to track, and let's just say just translation instead. And we'll go to our reference time and track this back and forth again. Go. There we go. And now let's switch to steady. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, and we should have stuff that's just kind of rock solid here. I like to zoom in and just kind of put this on the edge of my UI so that I can see if things move around. And it's a lot better. It's a lot better than it was. So let's take this and then let's zoom it in a little bit too. So I'll just do XF for transform and then just scooch this size up just a touch, just so we don't see the edges. We'll just make sure on the edges that we're not losing anything. Close our media pool here for a minute, just so we have some room. And so now we have this lockdown shot, which is going to be a lot easier for us. Oh boy. Let's take our clean plate. And let's just go ahead and start with our sharp clean plate. And let's rename this sharp clean. Hit 1 on the keyboard to bring this up like this. That's what we're looking at. And I think it might just be like a lot easier to just kind of soft split this whole clip rather than try to erase part of this and do a bunch of foolishness. Let's just put the clean plate over everything. There we go. Let's just put everybody. Let's just maybe take a mask, a rectangle mask, and just put this over like that. There we go. And let's just Move this over to where it really covers everything. Okay. And we're going to soften out this mask, but for now, it might be a little bit easier to match the blurriness if we don't do that. Because here on the left, we have our clean plate, and on the right, we have our real shot. We have a big difference in the blurriness of each of these. One thing that I'll do first is let's actually do a transform and make sure that the scale of this is about right. So I'm going to move this over, and we're going to use this same sizing. So 1.02, 1.02, and we'll just kind of move this down a little bit because I think that's about right. And we should be at a point where it's really hard to see the split here. Like we should really have to try. See, I think it's right there. Yeah, it's right there. Okay, great. And if we can get that almost just pretty hard to tell, then we're going to be home free. Let's go ahead and match the blurriness of this. And I'm just going to use the regular blur. I've played around with lens blur and stuff for this. You would think it would work better, but the regular blur tends to work better for this just because it's close enough. And the regular blur, you can adjust in finer increments, whereas the lens blur, I think you can only do like 1 pixel at a time, which is crazy. So let's figure out where that split is. Such a good sign. Okay, there it is, right here, right in the middle. So we have a 1 pixel blur on that, and that looks pretty good. So this is before, this is after. Yeah, 1 pixel blur works pretty well, okay? So that's great, and I'm going to keyframe that blur size right now. And we're just going to move forward until it just doesn't look right. There we go. But let's go back to where it does look right. I would say somewhere in there, 125 or so. So that blur size 1 is pretty good all the way there until it starts to blur out a little more. I feel like it kind of starts maybe 135. Let's try that. Then it gets kind of crazy to at like 160. Let's take up this blur to be reasonable, something like that. And then it just continues to be blurry all the way until like 184. And I'm just going to push that up a lot. And we can kind of go back and forth and adjust this as much as we can, as much as we want. We really shouldn't see too much of a difference here. This one's blurring a little bit faster. That's about right. This one's already a little bit blurrier. Quite a bit of movement. Okay, so that looks pretty good. One thing is that there is some noise on the right side that we aren't getting on the left side for whatever reason. Probably because we're blurring the noise out. That would make sense to me. And so to make this a little bit less of a giveaway, let's go ahead and reduce the noise a little bit here in this shot. So let's just say noise reduction. This is only available in the studio version, I believe. So you can just skip this part if you don't have the studio version, but I highly recommend getting the studio version if for no other reason for this. We're going to make sure that we have the noise reduction here in our viewer, and motion estimation type, let's say better. Spatial noise reduction, let's say better as well. Let's push up this threshold just a little bit, and this threshold just a little bit, and we should start to see things kind of soften a little bit. And now as we play this back, we shouldn't see very much noise really at all here. So we're pretty much taking out all of the noise. Let's just look before and after, see how much we're softening this. It is softening it quite a bit. We probably don't need to go quite that crazy. Let's just say spatial down to like 1.6. Helps a little bit. Let's take the threshold down a little. In fact, I can probably just take the spatial down and then put the temporal up like 1.2. We're getting rid of a lot of that. Still have a little bit, but it's pretty good. Very light in our noise reduction here. Here's before and here's after. I don't know if you can even tell with the compression. Maybe push up the spatial a little bit. 5.5. Yeah, that helps a lot. So now, if we have that noise reduction gone, We can take this noise reduction and put this same kind of noise reduction after our clean plate. And we shouldn't see much of a difference anymore. It should look really, really good to the point where I'm like, did we do it? Yeah, we're doing it. It's right there. Then once we get blurry, everything should still look pretty good. There is just a tiny difference, but you're not going to notice it because this is like when there's a really harsh mask on it. And I just don't think you're going to notice that difference at all. That's good. So we're going to take that mask and we're going to take this rectangle mask like this. And we're going to soften the mask. So it's nice and soft. So it's really hard to see what we did. Play through this and make sure nothing silly's happening. Feel like it's okay. Okay. So now what we've essentially done is just erased the Jedi on the left. And we're going to add him back in a minute. But heck, let's make sure that stuff on the right is working too, because we do have this kind of stuff coming in. And I bet we might be able to just take another mask here and just mask this part out. Get rid of yours truly. Boop. Let's see if that works. It works pretty well. So let's make that soft as well. I'll just bring that up in the first viewer. And let's soften that edge quite a bit. Softer the edge you can get away with, the easier this is going to be. The less you'll be able to tell what's going on. Seems like it works pretty well. Okay, so we've erased the parts in the shot that are going to be a problem. The other part that we'll have a problem with is this lightsaber. And so we might be able to just use that same one. Let's try it. There might be a problem with it, but let's try and just mask this off too. Boop. And let's soften that edge as well. Soften it as much as we can. I'm just going to cut back on his hand quite a bit. And it's okay if we lose some of his hand because we can put it back in. But we do want to get all of that blade. Let's see if that worked. Gosh, yeah, it works great. I don't know what you want. I think that works pretty well. Okay, so we've erased all the parts that are going to be a problem. And we just have our Sith guy here. And we're going to kind of just work on this shot for the rest of the time because all the problems are gone. And then we're just going to put stuff on top of it. So before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and bake this out because we're doing noise reduction and a bunch of stuff here that we just don't need to compute all the time. And so I'll select this and hit Shift Spacebar and type saver. And what a saver is going to do is render this out as a image sequence that's really high quality, and it's going to be able to play it back really nicely. And it's just going to make everything so much nicer for us. So let's go to file name, browse, and I'll make a new folder in our work files here. And we'll just call this Fusion Savers. Make a new folder and we'll just call this 2 lightsaber shot clean. Just like that. File name 2 ls shot clean and hit save. And now I can go up to Fusion and select render all savers. And what that's going to do is render all of these as an image sequence. And it's going to do all of the thinking beforehand so that we don't crash our computer later. Okay, that's all done. The render is completed. Took about 47 seconds on my machine. It might take more on yours. That's okay. I'll hit OK. And then I can just unhook those and I can keep these nodes. I can keep those around, but I'm just going to move those here to the left. And I'm going to double click and hit Shift Spacebar and type loader node, L-O-A-D-E-R. And I'm going to go to where I saved my image sequence right here to ls shot clean and hit open. And then I can connect that to my media out. But something to check is if it brought it in on the right frame, which it doesn't look like it did. So this is starting at frame 0, and it should actually be starting at frame 49. So I'm going to move this over to frame 49 right there. And now we have our shot exactly where it's supposed to be. And just to double check, because it's good to be thorough, man, we could just connect this and merge this over like this. And at any point, we should be able to turn this merge off and on, and we should not see a difference at all. There should be no difference. Any point here. If everything worked how it should, looks like it's all good. If we go to our merge and we go to apply mode difference, this should be totally black the whole time. Anything that is different is going to be colorized. We're going to see it. But if it's totally black, that means that we're good. All right, so we did everything right. Let's get rid of that merge and connect this directly to our media out. So what we're doing now is we're using this loader for everything that we've done so far. And because we don't have these connected, it doesn't have to think through these each time. So we're only viewing these nodes here. So that's just a way to move faster. Take this and just kind of move this over out of the way. And let's select all of this, hit Shift Spacebar, and we'll type UND for underlay. Double click off of it, hold down Alt, select that underlay and hit F2 to rename it. And we'll just call this clean plate like that. Also set this color to something like olive because, you know, green grass and stuff. Sure. Okay, so we've done a lot of work so far, and now we have a nice, easy thing to play back, and a lot of our major work is done here. Now, we do have a little bit of a problem right here, which I didn't notice until now. Probably not that big a deal. I think at this point, the lightsaber might be on. I'm going to select the media in 1, go to keyframes. Yeah, this is right about the time it turns on. We might still need to do a little bit of work there. That's too bad. We can probably just fix this by going to our mask here and just adding a little bit more of a mask right here. Make sure to view this in our viewer here. Turn on the mask. There we go. Soften that edge a little bit. That should fix everything, okay? So I'm going to get rid of our loader so that it doesn't mess with it. Go to Fusion, render all sabers again. Yay, okay. Now we'll get our loader back here, Shift Spacebar, LOAD. Pick this same thing, hit open, select it, and we're going to move this over again to start at frame 49. Boop, and everything should look just how it was. So we have our clean plate made, and we're ready to get into some fancy stuff. So now that we have the stabilized shot without any work on it, we can use this to grab any of these elements and just put them back in, okay? And so the biggest thing that we need to do is put our Jedi back in here. And really, we just are trying to get rid of this lightsaber hilt when it's kind of in between his arms here. So basically everything before this, all the way up until when he grabs that right there. So at frame 218. So basically before that, we need to get rid of the lightsaber, essentially is what we're doing. So what we're going to do is right here at frame 218, let's make a magic mask. And this is only available in the paid version of Resolve. I'll just hit 2 on the keyboard, and definitely recommend getting the paid version of Resolve, if not just for magic mask. What this is going to do is help us roto out this arm without tons and tons of work. And I'm not going to worry about the side of his cloak here. I'm just going to do this part right here and his lightsaber like this. And I'm just clicking on the parts that I want and kind of dragging over them. Not worried about this part. I just want this part of his arm and the lightsaber here. Okay. And I'm going to switch this to better. And that looks pretty good. And now we're going to just track this forward. I'm going to track this forward like this, and that should do a pretty good job of just cutting this out. Yeah, that works pretty well. Okay. Now backward, I'm going to go back 1 frame, and then I'm going to get rid of this lightsaber. So I'll hold Alt and just drag over the lightsaber here to get rid of it, because I don't want to track that anymore going to the left. So we essentially have like two keyframes here. The first one is with the lightsaber and the second one is without it, okay? Because that's where we're gonna make this transition. So that has a lightsaber, this one doesn't have it. So everything before this should just be the hand, no lightsaber at all. And then we're going to track this. I'll just track this in reverse and see how it goes. Might go pretty well. There's some problems here, so I'm just gonna hit stop. And we're just gonna kind of go through, I'm gonna hit left bracket and move through here. And anytime that I see the lightsaber, I'm gonna hold Alt and just drag over it. And we're just isolating the hand. We only want the hand and the fingers, all of that stuff. No lightsaber at all, okay? And you can use this track reverse one frame. We'll just kind of go through this and have it just track. We might just have to go through a few of these frames here. And I'm especially looking at around the arm. I don't want to see any lightsaber at all. All right. So back here, as soon as this white comes in, I'm going to hold down Alt, make another keyframe, and just keep tracking to the left and fixing this as we go. Okay. Just tracking this to the left some more, one frame at a time. And even though it's kind of annoying to go through this every single time, still going to be less work than rotoing this ourselves. Still going pretty quick. But I especially don't want to see any part of the lightsaber. There we go. It's being a little nicer to us now. And I'm just going to keep tracking back all the way through the frames until the hand is gone. Okay. And then let's just track this backward all the way because I think we're pretty much home free here. We'll just let this track to the beginning of the shot, might as well. It's okay that the edges are a little bit soft here, again, because of that clean plate. We're not going to really see those edges because they're just going to mesh perfectly with the clean plate. That's what's nice about this kind of approach, is it doesn't have to be super accurate. Okay, so now from beginning to end, we should have just an isolated hand that comes down. There should be no lightsaber at all. And then the lightsaber will fly in and it'll catch it and it'll appear, boom, like that. This is where we're going to make a transition between a lightsaber that we animate and the actual lightsaber that he's holding. So before this, we're still going to see the lightsaber for a few frames, but it's going to be a still that we animate, okay? So here from beginning to end, we have a pretty good roto on the lightsaber as well as his arm. And so this part of the Jedi looks pretty good, So just because we like this and we don't want to have to calculate it anymore, I'm going to do another saver. Shift spacebar, saver. I'm going to make sure I don't have any more savers here. Make sure I delete the other savers. And let's make a folder and we'll call this arm roto underscore, and that'll add the frame numbers after that. We'll go up to Fusion and say render all savers, and that's going to render that out so that we don't have any problems later. It's just nice to have this already calculated and it not having to think about Magic Mask, because you can run into problems and it's just a lot nicer to take 20 or 30 seconds and let this render rather than run into annoying problems later. Okay, so we have that render completed. Now I'm going to get rid of that saver just so I don't accidentally render it again. Shift spacebar loader. And I'm going to select that roto that we got, go over to my keyframes. And again, let's have this start. I'm just grabbing the middle and dragging it over to start at frame 49, which is our starting frame. Then we can merge this over and everything should just look beautiful. It should look like a disembodied arm kind of floating in nothing on top of our clean plate. That's great. I'm going to go back to our original shot, our stabilized noise reduction shot, and let's put this over, and I'm just going to slap a mask onto this, and I'm just going to do a terrible job here. Just grab this right here and just kind of select most of the cloak there and turn that on. So we're just isolating this cloak, and now we've pretty much rebuilt everything for the Jedi, and let's play this back and make sure it's kind of what I think it is. So now, yeah, that looks pretty good. And we're going to adjust this to be a little bit better, but that's the idea, is that we'll have our Jedi here and we have everything but the lightsaber going on all the way to the end of the shot. Looks good. There's nothing weird happening with the edges here. Man, that just looks really good. That's no problem. Okay, so let's make this roto a little better. Let's start here, maybe frame 178 or so. And I'm going to make sure that our shape animation is on by default. I have mine preset to have this off because it just takes up more resources to have it on, but we are going to do some rotoscoping. So we're going to turn that on, and I'm going to turn off my polygon just so I can make sure we're on the edge here just right. And we could do this with a magic mask, but it's just, it's not going to take that much work to roto this, and it's going to give us a better result than the magic mask actually. So I'm starting at 178. I'm going to go to the end of the shot, and I'm just selecting all of these and just moving them over to where they're supposed to be. Right on the edge there. And the name of the game here is I'm going to try to put the least amount of keyframes possible here. So I'm going to do one in the middle, one at the end. Let's do one at the beginning. This is going to be tricky with the blur, so I'm going to push this in quite a bit for the blur. That works. Then here, like frame 110, let's kind of do a similar thing. We'll just move this around a little bit just to set that keyframe. Move this in just a touch. And then in between these two keyframes, the first two, let's move that around, make sure it looks good. Okay, same thing, like 140 or so. Move that around. I'm going to push that in just right. Okay, we're just going to adjust this every few frames or so, just to be pretty darn close to what it's supposed to be. Nobody's probably going to be able to tell, even if we do this pretty wrong. So that's what's nice about this particular time. So again, I'll kind of move this around. Same thing, 230. Now, it might be a good idea in most cases to kind of track this so that it follows the movement. In this case, we won't even need to. I don't think it's even going to matter that much, just because we aren't going to know what we're missing. We aren't going to know that this edge isn't quite right on this fabric, and it's just going to be more complicated to track things than it will be just to kind of give some general movement to this. Somewhere in there. And now if I turn this on and make it totally harsh, let's play this back and see if it looks weird. Like this is as bad as it's ever going to look. Now, when the focus rack happens, I mean, that's obviously a dead giveaway, but after the focus rack, I mean, gosh, it's pretty good. Like yes, you could make the argument, no, it's not that big a deal. So let's just adjust the edge here. And so we're just going to animate the blur on this edge. And so right about, I don't know, frame 190 or so, the soft edge is going to be a little more. Something like that looks about right, 0.0023. And then as we get a little bit fuzzier, the edge is going to go up in softness a little bit. So that looks pretty good. So like 0.006. And it's going to go in between. And it should roughly match the softness of this edge. Let's see how that looks. I mean, it looks good to me. I think it looks great. I mean, you do see like a little bit of a wiggle here, right? right there. There's like just a little bit of wiggle right here. You can barely see it. And so to deal with that, we're just going to select this polygon, and right here where we have this little white, we can take this border width, push this border width down a little bit, and that's just going to choke this mask a little bit. And I think we're going to have a great time after that. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good. So yeah, this is one of those situations where a little bit of roto is just not that hard. And it actually is a little bit easier than a magic mask. Now, one thing is there's this little bit here, which is already in our arm roto. So if we turn our arm roto off and on, that's in there. So we can clean this up a little bit. That's just for one frame. And this is something we probably should have cleaned up before, but you know, sometimes stuff slips through the cracks. And so we can easily clean this up with a mask paint node. So with this node selected, let's just hit Shift Spacebar and type mask paint. And this is a way that you can use the paint tool to just apply a mask really quickly. It's just a paint node that you can use for a mask really easily. Very handy. And the one thing I'll do is go over here to mask and say invert, because we're just going to paint the parts where we don't want this to be showing through. And I think I'll just actually look at our media out, but select our mask paint. And we'll zoom in here, go to controls. I'm going to go up to my brush controls and take the softness down a little bit. And I'm also going to take the size down a little bit. We'll just kind of get rid of that extra black part and some of these little edges here. So now we have a little bit of this edge here that we can kind of just get rid of. Let's just see how that looks. So we fixed a lot of the problems. We fixed kind of the big problems here, but there's still, this pinky is a little bit weird. And so what we might end up doing is just getting rid of this pinky and then putting it back in. So let's first of all just see if we can get a good roto of the pinky. So I'm just going to copy and paste this stabilized shot, noise reduced. And where we really need it is right here when it's in front of that lightsaber, because that's where it's just going to get crazy. So like until about here, until about 213. And again, we might be able to just add a mask. Let's just try it. Okay, like this. And we're going to make sure we have this keyframed. And I'm going to just page through this until the end of a major movement. And we're going to put this right where it was and adjust from there. Okay. Just shrink all this stuff down. I'm going to hit Shift S to make that smooth. That's what we want. Over here, we're going to make this smooth too. Shift S like that. And then in between, I'm going to make sure this is good on each of those. That looks good to me. So in between, we're going to move this to where it's supposed to be. And just adjust it however we need. Go over 2 frames. That's going to be about the middle. See how that looks. 1 frame. We're going to try not to adjust this every frame if we can get away with it. Just because we're going to have a much better result if we don't. That looks pretty good. Okay. And now we're going to, again, move to the major movement, which is going to be right about there. Okay. I can hold T for twist, and I can kind of rotate this a little bit just to align this a little better. Something like that. Okay. And then in between these, we're going to make sure this kind of sticks. And then again, kind of in between. And yeah, this is Roto. Magic Mask didn't do a perfect job. Can you believe it? Okay. Okay, and again, we're just trying to minimize the work here as much as possible. So this should be right on. As often as possible. Select all of these and put them down like this. All right. And I think right about there is where it doesn't matter anymore. So we're going to take this over here. There we go. T for twist. Something like that. Okay, so now we have the basic roto of the finger that we can add back in. And so I'll turn this on. So this is just the finger. And for our arm roto, we're going to take away this finger here. So I'll just put an ellipse over our merge and invert it so that we're kind of just erasing this pinky here. And I'm just going to cut it sort of like in this part right here. And we're going to move throughout this part of the shot. Yeah, until like, we're mostly just wanting to cut off any part that looks weird. Okay. Move this up. There we go. Okay, we're just chopping that off right there. Great, that's all we really need. And so now we can add the finger back in. This should look normal. So we have the finger there, moves around, looks good. Okay. Right about there is where it stops. So we're just going to turn the blend down for our merge right there. So we're just only going to add this in where it makes sense. So right there is where it starts making sense. Here, we'll take this blend. Really starts making sense like right there. And before this, we turn it down. Like that. So now this part should look good. We can adjust it a little bit. There's a little kind of weird part right there. So we'll go in and just adjust this mask. That's the one thing about a magic mask is you can't go in and just adjust it real quick like that. So I want to make sure this is looking pretty good. The other thing we're going to want to do is soften this mask just a touch. Just a little. We still have a little bit of jank around it. We can take the border width down just a touch if we want to. And soften the edge of our ellipse mask, and that's going to blend those together. So now we should have a pretty good finger roto without much problems. Okay, the one thing I'm going to do is adjust this, is not put this ellipse on the merge. We're going to put it in a matte control before it hits the merge, like this. And I'm going to plug this into the gray input, which is the garbage mask, and then invert this, because then we can turn the level down and turn this mask off and on a little easier. So right here, we're going to have the level all the way up, and then 1, left, or turn it down. So now here's the original footage, and then here's with the mask. Great. And then here's with the mask, and then the original footage like that. So now we're just kind of going into the roto here for a few frames, and then we're going to come out. That's going to fix a lot of problems. Other thing we can do is add some motion blur. Let's just try this. Add some motion blur to our mask and see if that helps when this is moving. Oh, I think that helps a lot. Look at that difference. Oh, so good. Okay. It's pretty good. That's pretty good. We did a good job fixing that. Okay. So we have our arm roto and our finger roto here. And so let's put those actually together like this. I'm just going to grab this and bring it over, merge those together, and then put them kind of all in the same place. And we'll hit underlay, and we'll call this arm roto. Okay. So now we have a pretty darn good looking rotoed arm. Ooh, look at that. Something's happening there. Oh, it's because I turned off the merge. That's right. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to use this merge for it. Drop this in because this already has our animations in there, and that should work just fine now. Okay, great. Good thing I didn't delete that merge. And now we've completely got rid of the lightsaber. There's still a little stuff that if you want to, you can go through and clean all this up. But you get the idea. It's very intense to make this really, really good. Okay. Now we have this lightsaber showing up right there. And we've essentially gotten rid of the lightsaber until he grabs it. Okay. That's pretty much what we've done. So it's time to put that lightsaber back in. And in our VFX base, we should have a still of our lightsaber. And I'll grab this and drag this in. And this is just a still frame that we grabbed of the actual lightsaber handle that's going to work perfectly for what we're doing. We're going to make sure that we assign our input color space, Blackmagic Design, Film Gen 5. That's going to make everything all pretty. And I'm going to mask that out with just a polygon. And this, again, doesn't really have to be that great because it's going to have massive motion blur on it. But we'll do a good job anyway. How about that? Just going to trace this out. Do a really good job, and we'll just kind of cut it right here just to not have too much trouble on our hands. Okay, turn on my polygon, make sure things are closed. There we go. And we'll just adjust this to be maybe right on this edge here. Nobody's going to know that we cut this off a little bit. Okay, so there's our lightsaber hilt, which is in the same lighting and everything. I'll just go ahead and group this. I can hit Control G, make this one group, and we'll just call this LS hilt still. Then we can take this and merge this over our original footage. And I'm actually going to put this behind everything. So in front of the clean plate, but behind all this other stuff. So let's select all this and move it down a bunch. We're going to take this hilt still and put this way over here. And now we'll just take a transform. Let's find the first frame where this shows up, which is going to be frame 218. And we're going to move this and scale this to be exactly where it's supposed to be. Basically right there. And so we're going to hit a keyframe on our center and our angle. And then we're just going to go back a few frames. Let's just go back to frame 210 or so. And we're just going to move this over and rotate a little bit like that and just put it behind the coat. Let's see how that looks. So now that's kind of flying there. He grabs it. Boom. And right as it gets there, we're going to turn this merge off. So the blend here is at 1, and then the next frame over is at 0. Okay, great. Also going to turn on motion blur in our transform and take the quality up to 10. Let's see how that looks. See what we're doing here? Okay, it's starting, I think, a little bit high. And so we're going to take this down like this. See how that works. Now it flies up. It's got to make sense when he grabs it, that it'll kind of go all right. And we're going to have this slow down before it hits his hand. We're going to do that by going to the spline panel, selecting displacement and angle. And let's select these last two keyframes and hit F on the keyboard. So now it should sort of slow down as it gets there. Yes. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Okay, so he grabs this, and I think right there we're just gonna be a hack and just turn that lightsaber on and just not worry about this problem at all. Okay, because it is growing to be a lot bigger than it needs to be. Boom. Okay, so right there, that's where we're going to turn on the lightsaber. But I think the general movement of it works pretty well. Works pretty well. So let's save this, and we're going to turn on our lightsaber here. So let's make a lightsaber blade. We're going to do that by just making a solid color, and this one is going to be cyan. And then we're going to add just a polygon to that cyan background. And I'm going to turn it on, and it's going to start right here, and it's going to go down like that. Okay. We're going to push up the border width a lot to be nice and big. And go up here to this fourth tool that's modify only. You can also hit Shift M. Take this and just drag this down to just cover where we want. Something like that. Push up the soft edge a little bit. Yeah, see what we're doing? And now we're going to animate this polygon to follow stuff, which honestly don't probably need to do a whole lot. So we're going to start right, boom, there. And we're going to track that movement. Let's just grab this stabilized shot again. And I'm going to just say tracker. We can probably just use a IntelliTrack, and we'll just track this little screw right here. And I'll track reverse from current frame. Let's just see how well it does. Okay. And for the most part, it did a pretty good job. So as soon as that comes in, yep, did a great job. Okay. So there's that tracker. And we're just going to, instead of merging this, we're just going to run this through a tracker first. Then we're going to merge it. And for this tracker under operation, we're going to say match move. And for merge, we're just going to say foreground only. And that's going to apply that tracking information to our blade. And it should move around perfectly. Okay, great. We just have to add a transform, and let's just kind of overshoot this a little bit, just so we have lots and lots of room for this to move around. And I'll take this mask and bring it back here like that. Okay. So now that should follow it and be perfectly fine. The color management's tweaking out, but I think everything's going to work. And that is only going to happen right there. So let's go ahead and take that merge down here at frame 217 and at 218. That's just going to turn on. Okay. So now we have that blade roughly put in. So this is the cyan background. Let's make a white background too. I'll just hit Control C, Control V and turn this white and merge this over. And we're going to have the same polygon, but we're going to adjust the settings a little bit on it. I'll hit Control C, double click off, Control Shift V to put an instance on there. which is going to basically duplicate this, but then I'm going to de-instance soft edge and border width so that those can be unique. So I'll take the soft edge down a little bit and the border width down a little bit, and we'll have this kind of white core. There we go, something like that. There we are. So now we have our, bring this up a little bit. There we go. That turns on the lightsaber. Oh, baby. Yes. Cool. Let's add a little bit of motion blur to our tracker. Under settings, let's say motion blur. Take that quality up a little bit. So that'll apply motion blur to that track as well. Cool. Now, one thing we might want to do is have this kind of flicker a little bit, have it feel a little bit more violent. We can do that a variety of different ways. Let's just try some brightness and contrast here. You can play with the gain a little bit. Make sure to pre-divide, post-multiply. We can adjust the brightness, kind of like, can flicker that a little bit. So I don't know, let's just right-click on brightness and say modify with shake. That'll probably do it. Now it's shaking that a little bit, but it's not very much. So let's go to modifier. Let's take the smoothness down a lot. Take it down a lot. There we go, it's getting crazy. And then let's take the maximum down. So it gets crazier. Yeah, there we go. So it's, but it's not so crazy. That looks good. The other thing I want to do is apply a little bit of displacement to it. So let's make a displace node, DSP, and then plug a fast noise into the green input of the displace. Let's make sure that fast noise is detailed and scaled down a lot like that. And then this displace, we're going to take the offset all the way down and the refraction strength up a little bit. That's going to just make this look less fake. It's going to make it look more like a real kind of thing. And then let's push that seethe rate up a little bit on our fast noise. And now as we play this back, it's kind of moving around a little bit. Let's push that seethe rate up a little bit more. Okay. I think that blue is maybe just a little bit intense. This should be called white BG. This blue, let's take its border width down a little. There we go. So we don't get so much banding. Soft edge up a little. Yeah, so it's mostly white with just a little bit of blue glow around it. Yes, that looks a lot better. Okay. And for our displacement, I think the scale of this needs to be up a lot more. 40. And let's just take the refraction strength down a lot. Just a touch is what we want. Just so it barely kind of moves it. Yeah. Just so it doesn't look totally unnatural. There we go. Just really subtle. Yeah. Let's actually take the border width up a little bit for the white. And we can adjust the cap too. So this cap right here, let's make that flat. That's going to look a little bit more realistic. Let's take the border width up for the blue just a little. There we go. So now we have this actually coming in. Yes, much better, much better. Whew. Take this up a little bit. Very nice. Now we have a sweet looking lightsaber. Ooh, actually, you know what I should do? This hilt, let's take this polygon, select this polygon in the hilt and make a little bit softer edge on it. There we go. Something like that. Okay. And now when this comes on, we want a flash. And you can do this a bunch of different ways. You could just download a lens flare online if you want to, but the paid version of Resolve has a lens flare plugin, which is great. Lens flare, there we go. Just put this right over here. And let's do 70s sci-fi. Oh, baby. Modern sci-fi. Ooh, that looks cool. Push that up a lot. And this anamorphic streak, let's not make this pink. Let's make this more of a cyan, right? Okay, maybe a cyanish white. Great, like that. And we're just going to have this happen for a second. So just in our settings, we can keyframe the blend. So on this frame, we'll have it blend 1, and then blend 0 the next frame, and the frame before we'll have blend 0. So it just pops on there like that. Take our global brightness up a little bit, and let's take a look at our other elements here. I don't know if I quite like that. It's looking kind of weird. Just go to lens flare preset, and let's just go with mirror. That's kind of nice. And let's put this over and take the alpha gain down. And that's just going to give us a little bit more realistic kind of flare here. That looks nice. Again, it'll just be for that second. Okay. So maybe just a little bit hardcore on the full screen glare. I'm going to take that glare down. So it's just bright right there where the lightsaber is. That. Cool. Might even mask this out a little bit. Let's go ahead and take this ellipse mask. Let's just kind of soften that out just so it's a little just brighter right there. There we go. And it's not like a full screen glare. It's just brighter right there for a second. That works. That's nice. Okay. All right. So we've come pretty far here. Let's just get organized. So at the beginning, we have our clean plate, which is all of this that we've just made a saver for. And we have our hilt still, which we're transforming and moving. We're just starting it back here, and then we're whooshing it into existence there. Then we have our arm roto, which we rendered out, which is not perfect. We did some stuff to adjust it and mask it, make it a little bit better. We put that over our clean plate, followed by our body. So I'll just label this too, body. We have all of our lightsaber stuff here. So we'll just select all of this, make an underlay here, and we'll call this Jedi LS blade. And let's change the color to teal. That makes sense to me. Now we need to fix the bad guy's lightsaber. Let's also check our keyframes from our original footage here. Make sure that we have our timing right. We have this turning on just a little bit shy of our marker, but I think that's going to be fine. We can just move the audio around a little bit if we need to. But right here at frame 114, that's where the bad guy turns on his lightsaber. So let's go down here and we're going to do a similar thing. Let's take a background and let's merge this over. This is going to be red. And we'll take a polygon, and that's going to go over the end of our lightsaber here, which we do need to kind of rebuild this lightsaber as well. But let's go ahead and turn on the blade. And just so we can see this a little better, I'm going to grab our stabilized shot, and I'm going to draw our polygon right over this blade so that we know that it's facing the right way. We'll push our border width up here. Yeah, something like that. So there's our blade. That's when it turns on. Soften the edge a little bit. There we go. There's our blade. And this is another time we can probably track it. So let's just grab a tracker and we can bring our stabilized shot into that tracker. I'm just using the same one here. And let's just go ahead and track the movement of this lightsaber with our IntelliTrack. Let's grab our tracker from over here, start it right there. And then let's add another IntelliTrack. Put that at the end of the lightsaber. So we can track not only the position, but also the rotation. I don't think there's really a lot of rotation, but let's go with that. And this is where it first starts right here at frame 114. So we're just going to track forward from here. So track forward. Let's see how it goes. Doing a pretty good job. Okay, and as this blurs out, let's see how it handles it. It's doing pretty good. Not that worried about it. Awesome. Okay. So that did a pretty good track. Let's just go with that. Now this tracker, this is going to be our Sith LS track. And we're going to run our background through the track before we go into our merge. We're also going to transform this just like we did beforehand. So I'm just going to move this transform to be like right kind of in the middle of the lightsaber, just so we don't accidentally make it go off the edge or anything like that. Then I'll just take this polygon and move this over to where it's supposed to be. Right about there. This track, we're going to go to operation, say operation, match move, merge, foreground only. Okay. Now this should pretty much stick to where it's supposed to be. Now he barely moves, so it shouldn't really be much of a problem. And right here at 114, that's where our blend is going to come up for our merge. Take this down. So it's just boom, he turns that on, like that. Now what's cool is right here, we can actually animate this thing turning on with this length slider. Oh, so cool. So let's have this at 0 here, and then 1, 2, 3 frames later, we'll have the length. So it goes like that. Awesome. That makes our lightsaber grow. So this is going to be red BG. And let's just copy and paste our white background from our other one. And again, merge this over here. Sith LS mask is here. Let's copy and Control-Shift-V, plug this into our white background like this. And we're going to de-instance soft edge and de-instance border width. Okay, let's take the border width down and the soft edge down a little bit. Yeah. Maybe up a little more than that. Yes. Take the soft edge up on the red, soft edge down, and the width up on the white. So now we have this nice thick white lightsaber with the red glow. This should look pretty good. Kind of move around and everything just like it should. Yes, very good, very good. So the only thing left to do is beforehand, we got to replace the rest of this lightsaber hilt because we kind of just crappily erased it before because we knew we didn't want any of the blue blade in there. So let's put it back. And this is going to be a lot like we did with the finger. Okay, we're going to take this lightsaber stuff and move that over here to the right. And before this, let's just take a look at our stabilized shot here. What we're really looking for is a version of this without the blue. It's like that looks like an end. So what we could do is use time speed, and we'll bring this into a time speed like this and merge it over like that. And we're going to mask this. So let's just run it through a matte control. Let's take this time speed and take the speed to 0 and the delay to 71 because that's where we're at. Interpolation mode nearest, just so it doesn't have to think too much. And then for the matte control, we're going to add a garbage matte. And in that matte control, we're going to twirl down garbage matte and say invert, just because it's going to mask out what we're selecting by default, but we want to select things that we want to keep. And so let's just kind of take this whole little part here, and I'm just going to select that like that, turn this on, and there we have the little hilt part, okay? So now at frame 71, this is looking slightly better. Actually, it looks like we have a little bit of work to do here. This looks like this really got cut back on a lot. So what we're going to do is also just add another mask here to kind of fill in the rest of this. And this doesn't have to be that great. This will work, even if there isn't a very good edge here. Something like that. And then we're going to soften that edge just a little bit until we start to notice it. Soften this edge a touch, like that. And in this time speed node, let's add a paint. And we're going to paint maybe with this color, but just with a regular stroke. And let's take our brush controls down a lot. Let's take the size way down and the softness down. And we're just going to kind of paint this color in so that it's not blue. That's kind of what we're looking for here. Grab kind of this darker color, make it a little softer. And just kind of paint something in here. Make this a little smaller, a little softer, and just kind of paint something that sort of looks like it could be like the inside of the hilt of the lightsaber. And then once we apply the matte control, it kind of cuts that off. And that sort of works. Okay. Let's see how this goes. We might need to do something different here, but this should be the same throughout. Okay. Looks good. And now at frame, was it 71? We might be able to just use this same track. Let's just go ahead and make a tracker and take our original shot with it. And we're going to do a little track on this. Let's do IntelliTrack for these 2 points. Let's track it all the way backwards. And track it forwards until frame 114. That's when we really need it. We'll just let that go. Okay, something like that. Now this tracker, let's put the matte control into the tracker and the tracker into merge. Tracker into the green input of the merge. Like this, thank you. For operation mode, let's go to match move and foreground only. Now, let's see how that looks. The rotation is kind of weird. Rotation and scale and everything's kind of weird. So we might just want to do a point track on that. So let's just go ahead and reset our trackers. Let's get rid of these trackers here. Let's just go ahead and put this down here and let's just do a point track. We'll go to frame 71 again, just for good measure. Track this forward to at least frame 114. Okay, there's our track. And let's go to operation, match move, foreground only. Let's see how this looks. And the edges technically maybe aren't the very best, but I doubt you'd ever notice. And so we're just going to move this blade into position to come right out of the hilt of the lightsaber like that. And I think that's going to be pretty sweet. Yeah, buddy. Yes. Okay, cool. Now, when this rack happens, that's when things are going to get kind of weird. And I bet we can just add a blur to that as it happens. Let's just go ahead and add a blur here. Start about 145. In fact, we might even be able to take that same blur from our original here. I bet that's the way to do it. Control C, let's just grab that blur one, paste this here and see if that works. It might. Might work just fine. It's a little much, but the amount is good. So I wonder if we take this spline, take this blur size And I bet we could take all of this, just this, and instead of starting at 1, let's have this all start at 0. Okay. Let's see if that works. That would be convenient. Working pretty good. That's working pretty good. Yeah, I don't know what you'd want on that. I think that works pretty well. It is moving his arm over a little bit just because we didn't track it all the way, but we could fix that. We could just track it all the way. I didn't think we would need it all the way through. So let's just go back to our tracker, and under operation mode, let's just say none. I wonder if we just stop the track right there. Just go to the keyframes. Let's grab all the keyframes to the right and just delete them. I think that's going to be pretty darn close. That might be just fine. Because of that blur, we might get away with it. This tracker, go back to operation mode, match move, foreground only. Let's just see how that looks as we go. And we get a little bit more blur right here. I wonder if we could even just fade this out. I bet we can. As this gets blurrier, I'm just going to fade it out. So right about meow. And we're just going to fade this out to about here. Okay. So as that rack happens, we're missing a lot of that thing there. Okay, that's not going to work, but we could maybe blur one of these polygons. We could blend this one out. Let's take the level here and take that down. I bet that'll work. And so all we're doing is taking this mask that's just on his sleeve, and we're taking that mask down so that it doesn't kind of mess up as the rack happens, because it's kind of a dead giveaway when we have the difference between this little edge and this edge here. See that difference? And so we're taking that down as we blur it, and it's just being kind of hidden by the blur as we take that down. It's going to work fine. We have a little bit of difference here, but it's not going to matter that much. We're also going to take this same blur. I'm going to hit Control-C and then Control-Shift-V and instance that. So now it's going to add that same blur to our lightsaber. Everything should blur all the same, all at once. It's crazy. He stands so still. We could have almost used a still frame on him. He's so still. That would have been a little easier, actually. All right. We've fixed our lightsaber. We need to have that same lens flare when this turns on. So I'll just grab this same lens flare like this, put this right here, and take the alpha gain down on our merge there. We have our blend animated, so I'm just going to undo that. Let's do this in the merge instead. Let's take this down a little bit, something like that, and let's see when this happens. I think it was 114. Okay, great. There's that. Let's take the blend down for our merge. I'm going to move one frame over, take the blend down, and then right before here, the blend is down too, so it's boom like that, and then it shows up. So just yeah, cool. Same kind of thing. Let's do a little displacement here. I'll just copy and paste our displace from before. This is all going to be before the blur and before the track, probably before the transform too. Let's just take this up like this, take our displace and our fast noise and move this up here. Just hold shift and drag this displacement in there. We should have a little bit of displacement there. Yeah, it's adjusting it just a little. Just giving it a little bit of character. Okay. Let's grab our brightness and contrast, same deal. Shift, put that there so we have a little bit of that, and we'll just change the random seed so it's not flickering the exact same as our blue one. Okay. Whew. Okay. Let's move this over. And so this stuff is the red lightsaber. And let's set the color to orange because it's as close as we can get to red on our colors here. This stuff here is the hilt underlay. And let's just say Sith hilt fix. All right, let's have a look at our shot here. I think that looks pretty good. That looks pretty sweet too. I'd say this looks a little bit too square. It's kind of my first feeling, which we might be able to fix with the displace a little bit. Let's make this an X and Y displace. Bring the offset X and Y down. Change the Y refraction a little bit. Just do the Y refraction maybe. See what that feels like. It's a little too much. Take that down a touch. We just want to adjust a little bit. I feel like we got to take the border width up a little bit on this lightsaber, just to kind of cover stuff up a little more. Something like that looks pretty good. That displacement is still a little bit crazy, so we'll take that down to half. It's a little nicer. Yeah. Yep. Okay. The rest of this I think looks pretty good. All right, so this blade is moving around too much. It's kind of just like moving back and forth, and I wonder if that's because of the displacement. Let's see what happens when we take off that displace. If that's going to still do that. That's from the displace, and so that we don't need that displace on there, but that but the flicker looks really good, and I think we're going to keep that on there. Oh, that looks sick. Okay. So the shot is pretty much done. The last thing that we need to do is add our droid. Okay, so in our media pool, under VFX Bakes, we have a shot of our droid, droid1.mov. And I'm going to grab him and drag him down. And again, this is footage that was shot in BMD film. And we have our input color space selected here, Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5. And I'm just going to add him over our shot here. And we need to do a couple things. First of all, we need to get rid of our green background. And we can do that with a Delta key here, Shift Spacebar, DELTA. Bring up our inspector here, and we're just going to pick the background color, something like that. Go to our matte, hit A, bring up our Delta key here in the viewer, and then we'll just adjust this threshold, and we're just looking for a white silhouette here. Okay, great. There's our guy. Then we're also going to add a multi-poly and plug that right into our garbage matte. And we're going to garbage matte out anything else. And so I'm just going to kind of draw a shape around anything we don't want to include. Just kind of drawing a shape around our robot here. Doesn't have to be that perfect. We'll leave the grass and kind of cut back in on our robot here like this. There we go. All right. And we're just going to select everything except that green screen that Didn't get cut out. Okay, let's zoom in here and adjust our softness a little bit. Adjust the soft edge just a touch. Yeah, that's going to work just fine. Okay. For our delta keyer, here under matte, under replace mode, let's go to source. That's going to put that green back in there. And for our multi-poly, let's make this softer here down at the grass and keep it hard right here. And so to do that, we can hit this D right here. That's going to enable double poly. And if we hit tab, we can adjust the inside or the outside of the poly. The outside is the solid and the inside is the dotted line. And so let's just take this dotted line and move this in like this. So we're just feathering out the bottom of this mask here. There we go. Take this part just nice and feathery. There we go. Okay, something like that. So it's nice and soft at the bottom and hard on top. There's our guy. And because the lighting matches and everything, he's gonna look pretty good. So we'll just make a transform and size him down and put him right where he's supposed to be. Let's get to a place that's actually right. So we'll put him right about there. And next to our man, maybe add just a little bit of color correction here. Just add a brightness and contrast. Make sure to pre-divide, post-multiply. Push the gamma up a touch just to mix with this a little better. There we go. And gosh, it just looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Okay, let's make sure our timing's right. Seems like it's okay. Let's open the keyframes. Go to our media N3. We can just move this over to start a little bit later. So he should be here this whole time. Looks pretty good. Let's apply that same blur to him. Same blur we did for everything. So I'll grab blur 1 and Control-Shift-V, pasting that instance. I think that's going to work pretty well. So now when our focus racks with our guy too. Seems to work pretty well. Great. There's our guy. I think that works pretty well. Let's take another look at our before and after. Pretty awesome. Oh, it looks so good. What do you want? One thing we might do is take this part out right here, and then we're all done. Take this multi-poly, and we're also going to, let's add another poly here. We're just going to cut this out real quick. Just like that. Just the soft edge a touch. There we go. Cut back on this a little bit. There we go. That's fixed too. No problem. No problem. I hope this has been enjoyable for you. I want to make sure that you don't miss this footage. It is free right here. And we have a video, an end-to-end video of making the whole thing, editing, color grading, and of course, compositing the other shots right there. Hey, if you want more videos like this, let me know in the comments and we'll be sure to make some more cool stuff so you can make cool stuff. I still have coffee this time.